This is about the survival of the human race, a sign of the times, an analysis, and a commentary. ISIS. They say that the leader of ISIS has become the new Osama bin Laden, and this could be a threat in the future. As Iraqi army forces try to rally on the outskirts of Baghdad, it has become increasingly evident to Western officials that the army will continue to suffer losses in its fight with Sunni militants and will not soon retake most of the ground it has ceded. Recent assessments by Western officials and military experts indicate that about a quarter of Iraq's military forces are combat ineffective. Its air force is minuscule, morale among troops is low, and its leadership suffers from widespread corruption. As other nations consider whether to support military action in Iraq, their decision will hinge on the quality of Iraqi forces, which have proved far more ragged than expected given years of American training. Even now, fighters with ISIS are methodically consolidating their gains, extending their hold on Euphrates River Valley towns, securing access routes between their bases in Syria and the front lines in Iraq, and pressuring other Sunni groups to fight with them. At the same time, efforts to persuade the Iraqi government to be more inclusive to Sunnis and provide a counterweight to the intimidation and coercive approach of the militants are making little headway. Prime Minister al-Maliki has turned to tens of thousands of Shiite militiamen and volunteers that Sunnis see as a threat, and so far has not reached out in any meaningful way to Sunni Arabs and Kurds. Taken together, the picture that emerges is of an Iraq where the lines on the map mean little. In other words, Iraq has become a big mess after thousands of American lives and perhaps hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives which have been lost, including trillions of dollars spent by the United States. What has been gained? And is Iraq better than it was before the American-led invasion in 2003? Even though Saddam Hussein might have been a ruthless dictator, he did manage to hold the country together. Perhaps that was his purpose. So, again, after all these sacrifices, what has been gained? They say ISIS is now in control of large areas of Iraq. They have also captured a number of Syrian oil refineries, along with many American-made weapons abandoned by the Iraqi army. What was there to win in Iraq? ISIS can now use the proceeds from these captured refineries and, along with the Iraqi weapons, to become even more of a terrorist threat. Yes, these are very important developments. And what might be the end result of all these things? ISIS might even be able to buy more weapons of mass destruction, and perhaps eventually threaten the American homeland. It could become a possible scenario in the future. Northern and western Iraq has become a haven for Sunni extremists who have largely succeeded in erasing the border between their territory and Syria, giving them the ability to move large quantities of weapons and men into Iraq. With the newly expanded Kurdistan in the north, Baghdad in the south remain under government control. Now we are just in the position of protecting what we have left of our territory, said an Iraqi army commander in Diyala, where ISIS fighters and other Sunni groups were fighting. Our army soldiers are really down, said the commander. Despite the speed of the militants' advance so far, most American officials do not see Baghdad falling, but many of their other worst-case scenarios have come to pass, including the fall of Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul, and the militants' capture of several border crossings with Syria. The momentum is with ISIS, said one Western official. They grow and grow every day. In the face of that, some experts have declared the Iraqi army a defeated force, posing a dire counterpoint to the hopes and assessments of American trainers when the United States withdrew in 2011. Michael Knights of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy wrote recently that 60 out of 243 Iraqi Army combat battalions cannot be accounted for, and all of their equipment is lost. American officials said their assessment was that 5 of the Iraqi Army's 14 divisions were combat ineffective. It will be a mammoth task to put these units back together and rearm them, Mr. Knights said. Just as important, the defeated army needs to be turned around. Many of the American military advisors who are in Baghdad will be doing a detailed assessment of the Army's needs, American officials say. But a measure of the military's desperation is that its chief assistance comes from hundreds of thousands of volunteers and a smaller number of highly trained militia members. For Army units, and there are a number of them that are fighting hard, often under difficult circumstances, adding volunteers who have little or no experience has been of questionable benefit. Hundreds of volunteers have been killed or wounded in ambushes on their way to the battlefield, for example. Western officials describe ISIS as a far tougher enemy than the one the American military faced when it was battling al-Qaeda in Iraq from 2004 through 2009. Assessments of the militants' capabilities vary, but there is a consensus that despite their small numbers, they are well equipped, trained, and financed. They also appear dedicated to their cause of vanquishing the forces of the modern world and returning the territory they take to an earlier form of Islam. With an estimated 10,000 fighters, ISIS has been able to seize stores of military equipment and plan small offensive missions that, when coupled with a propaganda campaign, have proved highly effective. When ISIS overran Mosul, they captured the second largest ammunition storage site in Iraq, which one expert described as a Wal-mart of ammunition. That's nice to know. The militants also captured 52 artillery pieces, including Howitzers, which were abandoned by Iraqi troops as they fled south. It is unclear if ISIS can figure out how to use them, but if it did so, that would add to its already substantial firepower. So far, the fighters seem impervious to combat losses, quickly replenishing their ranks with fighters from Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Chechnya, and Europe, who appear to be drawn by the successes in Iraq. They have also found recruits by freeing prisoners in brazen prison breaks, like one last July, in which 800 prisoners were helped to escape from Abu Ghraib. During the recent assault on Mosul, ISIS released some 2,500 inmates from a prison. A number of them were Sunni insurgent operatives, and some almost certainly rejoined the fight, although it is impossible to know how many did so. Added to the worries about ISIS's assets are fears about growing sectarianism. In other words, another holy war. Again, Iraq has become a great big mess. And this, too, is another sign of the end of times, as we know them, transition days, which is a time of extraordinary happenings, changes, and events. Because it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations, and that should be a very important question to ask. Again, Revelation chapter 16, verse 8 And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch humans with fire. 9. And humans were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which has power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. 10. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom or nation was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. 11. And blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings and leaders of the east might be prepared. And all these are more signs of the times. So, could ISIS become even a bigger threat in the future?